Thanks for tuning in to the FATT Show. I'm Dee.
I'm Kevin.
And the FATT Show is football all the time. We talk NFL, college football, and even high school ball.
Yes.
And speaking of high school ball, we have in an interview here the University of Miami commit for 2019. This is Derick Hunter. Comes out of Dunbar High School in Fort Myers, Florida. Welcome, Derick.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to have you, Derick. How are things over there in Florida?
Rainy.
Yeah.
Rainy.
Well, I tell you, your resume is impressive. You are a 4-star defensive end that's considered from 247 Sports, is what was mentioned. Other notable offers, I love this list: Florida, Florida State, Louisville, Michigan, Notre Dame, Oregon, Oregon State, UCLA. Your height, 6'5", 251 pounds. And some of these interesting things about the rankings, D. Ranked 167th nationally, that's per 247 Sports. But here's where it gets interesting for me, and why I think you're very coveted, is that being number 12, you're the number 12 defensive end nationally, and ranked 25th in the state of Florida. That's 247 Sports. Now, this is a recruiting site. These recruiting sites, they like to, basically give, an idea as far as what this recruit is, where does he stand nationally. And so I think that's very impressive when we're talking about your stats, who you are, your profile. Now, thinking about your commitment, what were some key factors that led you to committing verbally to the University of Miami?
Just so my dad can be able to make it to all my games, and I just got tired of like all the other schools. It's just every school tell players everything, the same thing over and over again, and I had to think about the schools that I had a relationship with the coaches that I need to have a relationship with, and the University of Miami, I felt comfortable because I had a relationship with Coach Cool and Coach Diaz, and that's the people I exactly need to have a relationship with.
Oh, great.
Well, with 2 years of high school left, Derick, I'm sure other colleges are going to be recruiting you still. Do you plan on taking any other visits or even considering any other schools in the next year or two?
I'm just let God handle that, just keep counting my blessings at the end of the day, and just, stay focused on winning the state title with my team.
Yes. Now, talking about your recruiting profile, a lot of times these recruiting sites like to break down, the player. They like to say, like, well, here's his strengths, here's his weaknesses. First of all, Derick, tell me, what are some of your strengths that people are going to really look forward to seeing you play?
I'm aggressive. I love to make plays, and I don't give up on the road. I got a good motor. That's my motor. Playing the D-line position, you got to have a motor. So, you got to be aggressive. A lot of people want to see D-linemen do swing moves, be quick, fast. Yeah, all that's exciting for a linebacker, for a DB. This is down here in the trenches, so you got to play dirty. So, that's just how I was taught to raise, how to play the position.
I mean, a player that I kind of think about, and if you probably remember, who played for South Carolina, and his name being Jadeveon Clowney, being one of those guys that has that high motor, and that really, if it's the technique, but getting to the quarterback, that was something that he really do. Is that something you see yourself with that motor? Is something that you do also try to aspire when looking at defensive players like that?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I mean. He paved the way for a lot of defensive ends, just showing how to play the position. So, a lot of kids, if you want to know how to play the position the correct way, just throw on Jadeveon Clowney highlight film and you'll learn how to play the position. Just pay attention.
Right. Now, so really looking at yourself honestly and objectively, a lot of times the recruiting sites like to say, okay, well, this is something that Derick Hunter needs to work on. Now, you have 2 years. You have your junior and senior year there at Dunbar High School in Florida. What are some things that you think that you could work on that could maybe improve your stock in a way to get ready for the University of Miami to make that, happen?
Stand in the weight room. You get better in the weight room. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't like to put in extra work. And, you can tell if you go to some of the camps, you can tell by the kids that's in the weight room and the kids that's not in the weight room. So, staying in the weight room makes the player. You know, it builds you mentally and physically. So, you know, it's just that and staying on film, watching film 24/7, learning the ins and outs throughout the whole game. You know, you watch film, the game comes easier for you, and it's easy to make a play just like that. So, you know, just staying constantly with those, you know, working on that
And it's kind of
over
like,
and over.
and it's kind of like you got to know your body too. You got to know what you can put your body through and kind of do as far as hydrating it, getting the right sleep. You know, and as far as, you know, with any athlete, you know this, Derick, injuries can you know, kind of wreak havoc on some things, and so taking care of your body is important as well, right?
Yes, sir. Taking care of your body is the biggest thing. That's what another thing. I'm gonna stay in the weight room. You know, you know, a lot of people like get leg injuries. You know, you stay in the weight room, you focus on your legs a lot. You know, make sure everything stays strong in your legs and work right. You know, injuries will less happen. You know, on your lower body if you focus on that. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, but like squats, lunges, and all that stuff, you know, those are good workouts, like to get your legs and knees and, you know, everything right so they can stay strong and get it stronger so you won't have to worry about that. So, you know, that's where it comes to hydrating, especially being out there in that sun 24/7. You know, it gets to a lot of people, especially living out here during Florida. You know, some people be questioning themselves, you know, and I learned at an early age when it comes to training and all that stuff, if you're not questioning yourself about why I'm doing this, it's not working then. You just dare to be there. But when you question yourself, that's how you know it's working.
What is Mark Rick? What is he like? What is he and the coaching staff there? What are they like?
Um, Mark Rick, he's a motivator. You know, he's bringing that energy back to the University of Miami. And, you know, of course, a lot of people can see that on Twitter. You know, if you follow a lot of Hurricane fans and a lot of players, you know, Alonzo is a player, for example, you know, he motivated Alonzo to go out there and recruit a lot more players, you know, come to the University of Miami, bring back that legacy. Al Blades Jr. just committed a few days ago, so, you know,
Wow.
it's working with a lot of players. Storm's just getting stronger with a lot of kids, and just the whole University of Miami is like a family, you know, everybody, even to the players. Now, if you're a recruit and you go there right now, you know, the other players will treat you like you're already there. You know,
Wow.
it's just a family atmosphere.
So really, when you look at it, you were able to connect really well with them. What were some recruiters that came to actually visit you that you really connected really well with?
Coach Cool.
Okay,
Coach Cool.
right on. And he's a defensive line.
Defense and coach.
Yeah, defensive end coach. Okay.
And what particularly about him to impress you the most?
He just made, like, he came to me the most humblest way a coach can come to me. Some coaches come to you all excited and everything. You know, he looked at me like he didn't even care about me. Like, yo, you're a great player, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I got a whole bunch of other dudes, great players too. You feel me? And it's just, he kept God first, and he's, you know, teaching that to his players. You know, I want there for a screen game, you know, they all prayed with each other after the game. And, you know, that's big, you know, growing up, how I grew up, you know, I'm going to church on Sundays and stuff. I still go to church on Sundays. And it's just, God, you always got to keep God first no matter what. And just seeing that, you know, I got to have a coach that keeps God first with all his players, and, you know, everybody got the same mindset and on the same mission. So, you know.
So Derick, tell me what you know, the person Derick Hunter. You know, a lot of times we see, you know, especially in our show, we talk about the player on the field, but off the field. Tell us a little bit, Derick. You know, what made you like to play football? Who was it that you saw that, you know, played the game and you were like, boy, I really want to play this game? And to really, to some extent, how did you gain that love for football? And now, who are these other mentors that came into play for you in high school? Even as a junior and senior, you have these mentors that are there that look out for you. Who are these ones, and how influential have they been towards, you know, you making the decision to stay and really decide to play football?
My dad going to the barbershop every day at a young age, because I was a basketball player at first, and I used to hit him 24/7 and be like, man, that boy, they used to call him in the head hunter. So, you know, they be like, man, they used to call that man the head hunter. this and that, da 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 da. And I hear this every single day. They'll talk about how fast he was at linebacker and all that stuff. I'm like, that guy right there. So it's like, I always like, man, I'm gonna be better than him. When he used to go to work, I used to sit there and watch ESPN All Access, and now I see all them boys in college putting in their work 24/7. So I'll go outside and go do that, and then after that, I'll go to the basketball court. So I'll copy them after what they do. But I never played football until eighth grade. So it was like I was doing this at an early age, and watching him work out, and then after he get done working out, I'll go in there and try to do what he was doing. So basically just seeing all that built me to where I am now, basically.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. And tell me, what 5 schools in your top 5 were in your top 5 before you made the verbal commitment to Miami, University of Miami?
University of Miami, Florida, Oregon, UCLA, and dang, I really ain't had no fifth. It came down to a fourth.
Came down to 4.
So after about 10 years of subpar football for the University of Miami, you know, do you think that Miami has its swagger back, or is it getting back?
The swagger back 10 years ago, now that was a whole other era. It's not, football is too soft to call the University of Miami swagger again, because all these rules been changed and all that stuff. Back then, Miami was definitely some pit bulls. I don't even want to call them dogs. They're some pit bulls. That basically what it stalled into me. Like, that's the kind of football I love. A lot of people don't like that type of football, but a lot of people think it's negative. A lot of people think it's gangster and all that stuff, the thug in them. It's not that. People they're showing their emotion and love to the game.
Right.
All the hard work you did. If people will sit there and understand that, because some people, you gotta understand, you can't judge a book by its cover. Now, when you open the book and actually read the book, then you can understand it.
And you just can't.
A lot of people didn't want to understand that about the university.
And you just can't read the first chapter. You got to see the whole book. So it's the
see
first chapter all the way in, right?
All the way into the end of the chapter, you gotta understand the dog days these boys put in all this hard work, all summer long, all season long, spring and winter. All the hard work. When you get on that field, your emotions gonna come out. People don't understand that about the game of football. That's in the game of football in general. Emotions come out, and it's not a thug in a player. It's not a player has a bad attitude or anything. A lot of people don't understand that. It's just the love and passion and drive that they have for the game. Because believe me, nobody is not going to sit there and waste their time and put themselves through all that much work just to go out there and act the fool and waste all that down the drain for no reason. People, I can't even lie. I act the same way because I love the game of football. See, I have people come tell me about, bro, you need to calm down with on the field a little bit. Like, nah, man, it's how I am. That's the love that I got for this game. And I can't let nobody change the love I got for something.
Yeah, so you have obviously a high energy. You have, like you talked about, the passion, the love for the game. Talk a little bit about the safety issue, because we hear about the concussions in the NFL. You hear about how people are trying to help kids do the right thing, tackle the right way. Can you kind of go over with us how you feel people have helped you along the way to play the game safe?
It ain't no way to play the game safe. A lot of people talk about tackling the right way. You do all that stuff in practice, but when you get in the game, you got to make a play. You got to make a play, and you got to do it the right way. And you gotta execute for your team the best way to win. And it comes from technique and everything. A lot of people don't realize that when that ball is snapped, that ball is snapped. So automatically, it's no thinking. You just got to go do what you got to do. And it's like a lot of people think if you tackle the right way, a lot of people won't get hurt. It's football. It's been like this for years. You can't change the way the game's been played. And how I feel is like if y'all have a problem with it, then stop watching it. If the player's not complaining, if the players is complaining, then they need to stop playing it. But at the end of the day, you can't complain about how somebody hits you. It's football. You're gonna get hit. It's a man's sport. So you might as well toughen up and just put up your shoes and just walk away from it and go play tennis.
Yeah, and I remember when playing football, I could remember my coach telling me is like, if you don't go hard, that's when you get injured. That's when you get hurt because you're not going at full speed. If you're just going through the motions, right?
Mm-hmm. You
And
gotta, you gotta make a play. You gotta make a play, and you gotta do it any type of way. You know, horse collar is probably the only rule I could obviously say. You know, horse collaring. You know, I don't even do it myself. But you know, when it comes to form tackling and all that stuff, like how they be showing us in practice, when that ball snap, it's no more form tackling. It's just a hit. That's all we know is the hit. Fly around the hit. That's all we know.
Well, and the thing was too is that I think D that there's been a lot of conversation, especially when spear using your helmet as a weapon, which that has been a big, huge. When you talk about the rules in the game, where it's changed a little bit as far as flags and the fouls and the call. Now you're seeing a lot of people starting to tackle with their shoulders when they wrap up, and so you're starting possibly seeing maybe some injuries in that area. But again, really, a lot of it's just being able to make the tackle however you make it. You don't have time, like you said, to really think about the play. You have to act.
You gotta act, and that, if it comes like shoulder injuries and all that, that's where it comes to back to the weight room. You know, when you drop that shoulder, you got to make sure your shoulder is strong too. You do a lot of shoulder workouts in the weight room to make sure your shoulder is strong. And that's what my coach was telling us earlier in the weight rooms because we was doing curls and doing a lot of shoulder workouts. Getting our shoulders right. He was telling us when you drop that shoulder, you want them to feel it. You definitely want them to feel it. And if you do a lot of shoulder workouts, that's what I'm saying. A lot of people, if you stay in the weight room, you won't see a lot of. This is a player that I could obviously say, for instance, the tight end for Dallas plays through injuries and everything. That's a player that I can obviously respect. Because he stays in the weight room. He makes sure his body's right. He hydrates. He does everything correct. He work out the right way.
Now, Derick, I'm going to tell you something. You're talking to a big, huge Dallas Cowboy fan here. He will probably tell you what that player is. Go ahead, D.
Well, I was just wondering if you were talking about Jason Witten. He's probably going to go down as one of the greatest Cowboys of all time. So, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned him. He's been there. He doesn't miss games, and he just keeps working.
Fight through every injury. And that's what my coach was telling me during spring. I think I was sitting down because my ankle got twisted. And South Carolina came out there to come visit me, and I was sitting down. We chalked it up. We talked still. After practice, he had me running because he said, if you're the man of the team, I never thought that I'll be like he'll tell me that I'm the face of the team because I'm still a junior and we got a whole bunch of other big recruits at our school. He told me, you're the man of the team. This is your team, basically. And when you're the man, you cannot be hurt. And, he had one of my role models, Shannon Reed, come onto the field and explain what it means to be the face of Dunbar and all that stuff. And, Shannon Reed is somebody that I grew up with and looked up to ever since I was little. So, it's big. You can't be hurt. And I sat there and I thought about it. And I remember watching a documentary about Jason Witten. Is that this man, he never missed a game, fights through every injury, plays in games with injuries. And, that's a man I could obviously say that leads by example for, like, doing the correct workouts in the weight room and making sure his body stays straight. Because that never miss a game. You got a lot of players in the league that miss a lot of games. But to never miss a game, that's probably the longest active streak right now. So, I salute to Jason Witten. And, shout out to Dallas Cowboys.
Appreciate that, man. So, real quick, University of Miami, are you trying to drag some of your fellow football players with you over to the U?
Some people that I know, I'm trying to Dennis Briggs, I'm trying to, that's really the only person I'm trying to drag to the University of Miami. I built a relationship with him. He got offered at the University of Miami at the same time in the office with Coach Mark Rick. And the next morning, we was at the Nike opening with each other. And every drill we did with each other, we made sure we worked out with each other so we can build a relationship with each other. And after that, a few months, 2 more weeks later, we was at Under Armour camp with each other. and we was partners throughout the whole camp. We was doing trap drills with each other and everything. So that's obviously one player I could say I'm trying to drag to the University of Miami with, because it's all like, you gotta be comfortable going places, and I'd rather go somewhere with somebody that I know, somebody that I built a relationship with. So hey, as soon as I get there, me and him, we go back since high school. So
Now, are you going to be at the Nike
that's
opening
really
this year? Are you going to be at the Nike opening this year, coming up here? I think it's June 28th through the July.
See, I was a sophomore. They don't allow sophomores to go up there like that. Only certain sophomores and all that. The only thing that I think was holding me back because I wasn't committed at that time. That's how I feel. I wasn't committed at that time. That's the only thing that was holding me back. And it was one sophomore. He was from IMG, which I don't even like talking about IMG. All that. I feel like they get like everything is given to them. Like they didn't have to go through the hard work that I had to go through to earn everything that I got now. So
So tell me a little bit about you personally. What are some things that Derick Hunter likes to do? One thing we talk about is that a player on and off the field. Did you look at University of Miami as also some of the academics that they also do and offer? Was that really big for you as well?
that was that's another thing, because there's a lot of business in Miami, and I want to go to college to major in business. So I want to go down there and build a relationship with a lot of people, and a lot of that was really the big thing about it. That's why I really committed to the University of Miami, because it's a big city. It's close to home, and it's a lot of business going down in Miami. And I'm a business dude. I love making money. I love sitting on money, just let it sit there and just look at it. I just want to look at it.
So
Wow,
so
baby. Wow.
so what is so what is it that you want because we talk about a person has to sometimes have a little foresight, and they need to look down the road. What is the kind of thing that you would want to major in at University of Miami, and what would you like to aspire to do as a career outside of football?
A career outside of football or real estate.
Oh,
I
interesting.
really want to do real estate.
That's good. That's good. Because again, the thing about it, and Dee has shared that a couple times with in regards to a lot of athletes, especially recruits. They want to make it to the league. They want to make it to the NFL, but sometimes it doesn't pan out, and so that's why it's always good to be able to balance that. Work hard on the field, but also in the classroom is something very important.
But give y'all a secret, the league is in the back. That's not even like, and that's the last thing on my mind. I'm thinking about education first. It's not guaranteed to anybody. That's a free education. If you get it, just run with it. So I think about real estate more than I think about the league.
Wow.
I was told somebody told me, I can graduate early, enroll in early at the University of Miami. My third year come, boom, I got my degree. I could possibly go to the league, but I graduated with my degree too. Because if I go in early, I basically did 4 years, kind of, early little semester. So I thought about that a lot. I really think about that. So if I do plan on going to the league, I always got something to fall back on because I got my degree. A lot of players don't think like that. And, you got a lot of players that do think like that because lately a lot of players been early enrolling. So
Well, and the thing is even when players do make it to the league, not everybody's Jason Witten. A lot of these guys, they come in and it's a 3-year career. They get hurt or they get cut. You got some other guy coming in and taking your spot. And it's like, the average, I think, in the NFL is about 3 to 5 years. And so it's really short for most guys. And so to have that as something to fall back on, it pleases me to see that you're focused on that because,
very impressive.
Even if you do make it, which would be great, you still have a life after football.
And that's the big thing, life after football. A lot of players don't think like that because eventually it's going to be a day. Like sometimes where you just gotta, you gotta think like it's almost over. That's what Peyton was telling himself a few times in the locker room, and it's almost over. And eventually you're gonna have to put up the pads. And, focus on life after football. You want to make sure everything is straight and handled life after football. If I'm blessed to have many years in the league, if I'm blessed to even get drafted or go to the league, I'm just let God control that. But also at the same time, you gotta think about it. I gotta have this backup plan. I gotta make sure I'm doing something while I'm in the league too. So it's like off season, make sure I'm doing some real estate, owning, buying some land, flipping some houses, stuff like that. You gotta know how to play the system. I sit there, I think about a lot of stuff. You gotta use your head. If you don't use your head, then you don't get nowhere. Always think. So I sit back and I think. I just listen to music and think about a lot of stuff. So I really want, like, all season. I was always focusing on all season. That's why I'm gonna focus on my real estate, build me a little franchise. Buy some land and flip some houses. Okay, I made some money during the off season. Now it's time to go during the season to make some money. But also, stay at the same time, my off time during the off season, make sure I always work out, put in that work and stay constant with that. So, but also at the same time, it's deeper than football. It's way deeper than football. This is your life. This is making sure your family is good for the rest of their lives. Your future, your grandchildren, your children. Taking care of my dad, buying him that house that he want, buying him the car that he want. Just that, you gotta think about stuff like that. It's not always about football. It's not always about yourself. You got people. You got people that you gotta take care of too. At the end of the day.
So Derick, when D and I are looking for some places in Florida where we want to retire, are we good for calling you up as a real estate agent?
No doubt. Man, we go back since I was in 10th grade. We going.
That's right. You know what's impressive, Derick. You're young yet, and you have a great head on your shoulders. You're thinking about the future, and there is a life after football, and it sounds like you really have your future mapped out for you, and we're pulling for you here in Portland. We're gonna watch you grow.
Yes.
We're gonna look for your name and your number there at the U. So we are really glad that you were able to join our show here, the FATT Show, in Portland, and we just appreciate it. Thank you very much, and good luck to you. We're going to be rooting for you all the way.
Yes, we will. And we're going to keep in touch. So we're going to keep in touch with you as far as I'm going to keep checking in on you.
Okay, thanks for having me on the show.
All right.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.